diagnosis. They can benefit from confirming diagnosis by taking blood tests, doing x-rays, something objective. In psychiatry we have to rely just upon symptoms, clinical pictures. But we have known for many years, decades, that a substantial contribution to psychiatric disorders, and schizophrenia in particular, is genetic. Recently, with my colleagues, we identified a whole number of new mutations in people with schizophrenia. Now, new mutations are those where a DNA change has happened in the person with the disease that is not present in either parent, so they haven't inherited the DNA in the traditional way. By doing this study, we probably got one of the first glimpses at a pathophysiological mechanism for schizophrenia. I'm deeply honoured that the work that we've been doing has been recognised by this award. I mean, it's great. I'm thrilled by this. I suppose what would be most important, really, is answering a question in schizophrenia research that has a direct benefit for patients.
I've been interested in psychiatric research really since I was a medical student. It seemed to me then, and it does now, that this is one of the great challenges facing modern medicine. The genetics of schizophrenia has really been transformed over the past 5 years. 5 years ago, we knew that the disorder is genetic. Now we have a wealth of evidence telling us that really disorders like schizophrenia, the genetic component is very complex. It involves many genes, hundreds of different genes probably. What we want out of this work is to start to get a handle on the biology. What are the genes telling us about schizophrenia? And I think we're starting to get enough data that we can do that. And this is really very exciting and is, I think, beginning to tell us where in the brain we should look. And it's actually where in cells we should look. We feel that by discovering the genes, if you like, we're priming this next stage of development. And so that we hope that in the future people will benefit through having new treatments. Well, it's a great honour to receive the Lieber Prize. I've been really delighted by it. Having the approval of your peers, of other distinguished scientists who's saying that they admire your work, is the best compliment that you can get in science. The question I'd most like to get the answer to over the next 5 years or so is really the extent to which schizophrenia is caused. I think there's going to be a lot more to come from genetics. We've only just got the tip of the iceberg.
I was fortunate to get a NARSAD Young Investigator Award in 2009, and it was really crucial in my development and I think in the emerging research findings that we're discovering. The most valuable thing at the moment I've been able to do is identify what is one of the largest samples of those with severe schizophrenia in the world, and I think that's starting to lead to new findings. We've spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 years collecting clinical samples, so recruiting and interviewing people with schizophrenia to find out more about the condition, with the ultimate aim then of linking genetic findings with these kind of symptom level findings. What I hope is that with new and emerging findings we'll explain more of the genetics of schizophrenia, and that will help us identify the pathways that go awry in the brain of those that subsequently develop the condition. If we can identify those pathways, then we can also look at the effects that those pathways going awry has on cognition and other symptoms, and that means that we may be able to have treatments specific to symptoms. I think in 5, 10, 15, 20 years we won't be treating schizophrenia as a diagnosis in and of itself. We'll be treating spectrum of symptoms, and I think this research and the research approach, which I think I've followed and continue to follow, should help inform those kind of treatment developments.
Memory is personal and it's evocative and it's related to nostalgia and history, and it's a fundamental part of who we are. It's harder to think of anything much more exciting than studying the nervous system and the brain and how it works. What I'm interested in is systems neuroscience. The parts of the brain that we study are prominently the hippocampus, area of the brain that's vulnerable to damage in chronic depression. So if we've made some small contribution to all this, it's in understanding something about how this system works, how this structure works, and what memory is. What we do primarily to get at that is to study patients who, because of an injury or disease, they've had damage to particular parts of the brain. The fundamental thing is that we know that memory is not a single faculty of the mind. Memory is composed of many different abilities that are supported by different brain systems. As one looks over the course of the history of the problem, we've come an enormous distance from not even knowing where these structures were, or not even understanding what memory really is, to having a sense of how to think about memory. We know a lot about the details of how these parts of the brain work, but on the other hand, we're really just at the beginning. We're always faced with the challenges of trying to understand an issue, trying to understand a problem. All of us who do basic science, I think, have the belief that what we're doing has the potential in eventually finding applications for health and disease.
In my personal experience, what usually turns a researcher on is that curiosity and the joy of discovery. Finding a problem that is just so interesting that you're going to dedicate years, if not decades, to solving that problem. I run the program in neurogenetics at UCLA and the Center for Autism Research. The essence of the work that we're doing is we use modern technology and tools to understand the causes of neuropsychiatric diseases such as autism so that we can then treat them. There are a few things that I'm most proud of in terms of discoveries. One is defining the molecular neuropathology in the autism brain, that is, the changes at the gene level that are occurring in the autism brain. The second is the ability to make a genetically engineered mouse and study it and show that it has autistic features. We can actually begin to treat social abnormalities caused by genes that predispose to autism in humans. We're in this time of extraordinary promise, where we have the most extraordinary tools we've ever had. So funding is critical to push this forward. I really think we're on the precipice, in a very positive way, of really a totally new neuropsychiatry. The Brain and Behavior Research Foundation is really critical in neuropsychiatric research. These kinds of awards and the kind of funding, especially to young investigators, is really remarkably important. When I started working in autism, I never imagined that we'd have the amount of progress that we have now. It gives me hope that we can even do more.
The most exciting thing is when you have the eureka moment in the lab, you find the gene, you understand something new that hasn't been seen before. Those moments are priceless. I'm a child psychiatrist and a human geneticist. I see patients and I run a laboratory that is focused on identifying the causes of autism, Tourette syndrome, and other childhood neurodevelopmental disorders. As I started taking care of kids with serious psychiatric illness, it became clear how little we knew about these complex disorders. And the disorders are very complex. They've been very frustrating because of the level of complexity of the brain. The idea from the start as a clinician was to use genetics as a window into the biology of the disorders. And we're finally, I think, making significant progress. What we're trying to do is specifically to identify genes that contribute to these disorders. So if we can understand the genetics, we may be able to understand brain development. If we understand brain development, we might begin to understand the complex interplay of environment and experience with genetics. And it gives us some concrete ability to treat kids who are severely affected in the near term. Investing in research is tremendously important. It helps people know that there's a path forward. It helps get the best and the brightest. The Brain and Behavior Research Foundation is invaluable in the field. This is our lifeblood. Without grant support, we don't move forward. We don't have labs. So they keep our research going, they bring new people into the field, they replenish the field. Having this kind of award recognize commitment to science and to science in child psychiatry is really a wonderful thing and tremendously helpful.
Can I ask our two recipients of the Lieber Award to please join me at the podium? The first prize in research tonight is our oldest. It was first given in 1987, so that's about 25 years ago. You'll notice that it's titled the Lieber Award. And that was because Connie and Steve were looking for any and every way we could to support research. And so they anointed this award. Interestingly enough, before they did that, there was very little, and to my knowledge, there is still very modest instances in which people doing psychiatric research are given awards. So this Lieber Award is for outstanding achievement in schizophrenia research. This year, two outstanding scientists from Cardiff University share the award. Michael O'Donovan, MD, Ph.D., and Michael J. Owen, also MD, Ph.D. Dr. O'Donovan's main research focus has been on the genetics of schizophrenia and on basic laboratory methods related to genomics and gene regulation. His landmark research with Dr. Owen involves the application of this new molecular genetic technology to try to identify specific risk genes for schizophrenia and how it can be treated more effectively. Dr. Owen has made pioneering and sustained contributions to schizophrenia and genetic research. In collaboration with Dr. O'Donovan, he has identified robustly replicated risk alleles for schizophrenia and led the field in demonstrating that there are a large number of common risk alleles for schizophrenia, many of which overlap with bipolar disorder. Please join me in congratulating this marvelous team of Drs. O'Donovan and Owen. Congratulations. Do you want us to come over here? We'll come over here. When I get this out of the way.
Well, I've been speaking earlier on, and I really, a number of people in this room have probably heard quite enough of me for one day. I'd just like to say very briefly, I'm immensely grateful, proud, honoured and thrilled to be the recipient of this award with Michael, and I'm very grateful to the foundation, I'm very grateful to the Liebers. And there's a third person I would really like to thank, and that's the editor of that video who made me look much better than I really am. So, thank you all.
I really just want to say the same thing really as him, which is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Yes, thank you very much for this award, and thank you to the Liebers, and thank you to the BBRF. This is my first exposure to this whole thing and to the BBRF, and I'm amazingly impressed by what you've put together here. It's hugely valuable and yeah, really impressive. So it's a great pleasure to win this prize, a great honor to be in the company of such the distinguished scientists who've won it before, and it's a great pleasure to have won the prize with my friend and colleague of over 20 years, so thank you.
We have a unique prize to award at this time. The Brain and Behavior Research Foundation takes very great pride in having helped nurture the careers of thousands of investigators whose scientific visions were supported early on through a NARSAD grant. Most of tonight's Outstanding Achievement Prize winners were at one time recipients of those NARSAD grants. The Sidney R. Baer Jr. Prize for Innovative Schizophrenia Research was created in 2004 and is awarded each year to a promising young investigator identified by our Lieber Prize award winners. This year, Drs. O'Donovan and Owen have selected their colleague, James T.R. Walters, MD, Ph.D. from Cardiff University. Dr. Walters is a promising young MD, Ph.D. researching the nature and genetic basis of cognitive deficits in schizophrenia. He's investigated the impact on cognition of several schizophrenia susceptibility alleles and obtained interesting and provocative findings. He also recently helped identify 3 novel genes involved in schizophrenia. In the immediate future, he will continue to investigate the action of schizophrenia genes on cognition and aims to understand whether genetics can be used to implicate specific biological processes in cognitive impairment in schizophrenia. Please join me, along with Drs. O'Donovan and Owen and George Handren, representing the Baer Foundation and one of our distinguished members of the board of the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation, in congratulating Dr. Walters. Dr. Walters? I think we take a picture and then raise it over. Sure.
So thank you very much. I'd like to say what a privilege it is to receive the awards and thank George Handren for the incredible welcome he's given me. George set up the Sidney R. Baer Foundation with Mr. Baer some 15 years ago now, and it means even more for me that Mr. Baer himself suffered with schizophrenia, which is the condition in which I'm researching. I'd also like to thank, if I can, Mike and Mick, Professors O'Donovan and Owen for nominating me for the award. Dr. Partis mentioned last night about the importance and tradition of mentorship in research and medicine, and I couldn't have hoped for better mentors who've supported and encouraged everything I've done, really, over the last 6 or 7 years, despite busy schedules. I was thinking what to say about Mike and Mick, and I considered the option of invoking the idea of on the shoulders of giants. I thought this would probably be a bit grandiose, even for Lieber Prize winners. But perhaps more than that, I didn't want to mention giants because I'm more of a Detroit fan. I'd like to finish, if I can, by saying that I thought I was enthusiastic about psychiatric research until I arrived in New York last night. What I've seen has been an incredible eye-opener, and I commend all those involved in the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation for what they're doing. I was a recipient of the Young Investigator Award in 2009. It was one of the first grants I had, and I can say the pleasure of opening that envelope and seeing that you've been granted what is often a first award is something that we need. It's something that young researchers and developing researchers, if we're going to retain people and attract people to do research in these what are often devastating conditions, it's really something you need to continue doing. And again, I commend you for doing that. The other thing I want to say very briefly is that I also admire the fact that it's not restricted to the States, but it's open internationally. If there's one thing that genetics has taught us in the last 5 years or so, it's that the way to get purchase on these conditions is through international collaboration. And I really think that that's going to be the way forward. So thank you very much indeed, and all power to your elbow, and please continue to do the great work that you're doing.
Dr. Walters made a number of very important points. This point about international collaboration is critical. And if you look at both the award winners tonight and also look through the various people who've either received grants or awards from the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation, it is replete with people all over the world. The issue is good psychiatric research. Borders, whether geographic or disciplinary, are of no consequence to us. The Goldman-Rakic Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Cognitive Neuroscience has been awarded since 2003. This year, we recognize Larry R. Squire, Ph.D., from the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Squire is one of the great international contributors to neuroscience, with research critical to both basic understanding and its application to clinically relevant processes. His path-breaking work on memory mechanisms has been of enormous importance and been performed with exquisite care. He is also appreciated at a profound level for his unusual excellence as one of the most thoughtful and gifted mentors, and mentorship, as you hear, comes up again and again, able to bring out the best in others, and as an educator who is effective at every level. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Larry Squire.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to accept an award that honors Pat Goldman-Rakic. She was a friend and a colleague and a fine basic scientist and a cognitive neuroscientist, and she had a great talent. She had a gift, really, for articulating the relevance and importance of her own basic research for understanding clinical conditions. And I believe, as Pat did, that the basic research so many of us do is foundational for understanding and treating neurological and psychiatric illness. It's also a privilege tonight to be able to represent the discipline of cognitive neuroscience, if I can say that, and the many neuroscientists who study perception, attention, emotion, memory, action, and other aspects of higher cortical function, all with the conviction that basic knowledge about the brain helps to illuminate the way to treatment and prevention. And I thank the Foundation for their vision and for their excitement, being carried away, as we all have, by the excitement and promise of not only basic science, but also clinical science. Thank you very much.
Since 2000, the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation has also awarded the Ruane Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Research. Tonight, we're pleased to present this year's prize to Dr. Daniel Geschwind, MD, Ph.D. of the University of California, Los Angeles, and Dr. Matthew State, MD, Ph.D. of Yale University. Dr. Geschwind has numerous distinctions. He provided the leadership that led to the Autism Genetic Resource Exchange, a national resource for the study of autism spectrum disorders. He has pioneered the approach of using phenotypes that dissect the syndrome genetically. His groundbreaking studies include studies of gene expression in the postmortem brain and human fetal brain development. His work spans fundamental laboratory genetics and elegant clinical phenotyping, including the use of brain imaging to understand how risk genes modulate brain function. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Geschwind.
I was waiting for my great friend and colleague Matt State to come up as well. It really is truly an extraordinary honor to have this award. I was thinking about what was said earlier about the Young Investigator Award, and I want to thank the Liebers and the previous incarnation, NARSAD, really, of providing me with one of the earliest grants that I had to do the research that we do. And I also want to acknowledge my son Eli, who's at Columbia as a freshman, and my brother Ben, who lives in the area, who's with me today as well. Thank them for coming. And there's several, the work that we've been doing is in autism. And I was challenged by a friend of mine in California to make a difference in autism and to begin to work and to challenge our field. And I'm an adult neurologist. And this really speaks to the notion there are many boundaries that we have. They're not just international. We have boundaries between the field of neurology and psychiatry. The idea that there's a neurologic disease or a psychiatric disease. And in some way, the Brain and Behavior Foundation, by bringing the notion together that what we're talking about is brain and behavior, not a neurologic disease, not a psychiatric disease. These are brain diseases that affect people. And my work has been focused on diseases that affect children, even though I'm an adult neurologist. And it's been an extraordinary privilege for me to be able to work with my colleague and to share this with my colleague Matt State, whose entire career is focused on, on childhood diseases. And we've not only worked together, we've competed a little bit, and we've had an extraordinary amount of fun doing this. And so it really is a great honor to be sharing this with him. And the other thing I wanted to say about sharing data and sharing samples and the idea of international collaborations, I think the work from the group at Cardiff really brings that home in terms of the international schizophrenia collaborations that they've led and participated in. And in autism, 10 years ago, we knew very little about really what caused autism, and it's been because of international collaborations and resources and public-private partnerships that we've been able to use genetics to identify genes. Now we have a notion of what causes autism at a really neurobiological mechanistic level. It's just a beginning. We don't have treatments yet, but I think the next 5 or 10 years, these genetic findings are going to lead to the development of effective treatments, and that's extraordinarily exciting. Anyway, I've talked more than my 1 minute, but I wanted to thank you and just say how extraordinary this is. Thank you again.
Dr. State represents a rare combination of a clinically trained child psychiatrist who also has received a Ph.D. in genetics. His combined expertise has led to fully informed studies of the genetics of autism and Tourette syndrome. Dr. State is one of the most outstanding scientists in our field with discovery of rare genetic variants as risk factors for autism. He's had other studies to show how risk genes disturb brain functioning in animal models of illness, and his work will undoubtedly influence the larger field of psychiatry as neurodevelopment factors are increasingly recognized across a wide array of adult-onset conditions. Please join me in congratulating Dr. State.
So, excuse me, I just want to express my gratitude for this really extraordinary award, and to be up here with these tremendous scientists is such a great honor. Thank you so much to the Liebers, to the Scientific Council, and to the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation at large. It's really, as I said, such a tremendous honor. As I think over the last couple of days, I think you in the room live this, that these are devastating disorders, and unfortunately, the societal response in general at times is shameful. In that context, the contributions that you've made to move research forward is really the light. So you should congratulate yourselves for being a part of such a great effort. So please do. I also want to say that As a child psychiatrist, I'm particularly grateful that there's an award that honors child psychiatry in particular, that really psychiatry sometimes has a tough row to hoe, and child psychiatry scientifically really in some ways has been the stepchild for many years. And so to have an organization like Brain and Behavior Research Foundation specifically identify child psychiatry as worthy of this kind of award is really a wonderful thing. So I want to thank them for that. And then I obviously have to thank the people that have made this possible. So I want to start with my wife Amy and my daughter Hannah for inspiration, solace, support throughout the years. I was 35 years old and told my wife that I wanted to go back to school to do a Ph.D. in genetics, and she didn't bat an eye. She said, "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's go do that." So yeah. So I also have to thank my sisters who've come all the way from California, who have been my biggest fans, I guess, since the moment that I was born, so thank you for flying in. I also want to thank a couple people in the room. So I don't know whether Dan remembers, but this is an incredibly meaningful thing that not only have I won this award, but I've won it with Dan. About 17 years ago, I was a child psychiatrist thinking about trying to learn science because I had no background at all. And I went to my good friend who was chief resident in neurology, went to his office, he had this beautiful lab, and I said, "Dan, I'm thinking about maybe doing an advanced degree." And he said, "You need to go to Yale and you need to study genetics." And it was a turning point in my life, and I just can't thank you enough. It makes us tremendously meaningful to be here sharing this award with you. And then I also want to thank Dr. John Greeley, who's sitting in the audience. He taught me at 35 how to be a scientist, and he let me in the lab despite the fact that I tried to burn it down by leaving on a Bunsen burner. So I'll end there. Thank you all so much. It's such an honor.
What do you want them to do? What do you want them to do? Well, believe it or not, we also serve dinner. And I invite both our award winners and all our guests to please enjoy dinner. We'll be back a little bit later.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program will resume after dinner. Bon appétit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Herb Pardis as he returns to the stage.
Well, I think I had a good dinner. I hope you did as well. And don't be reluctant to ask for a doggy bag. You can take home whatever is. In 1993, we began presenting the prize for outstanding achievement in mood disorders research. This evening, we announce a newly renamed prize, the Colvin Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Mood Disorders Research, in honor of the late Oliver D. Colvin, Jr., and his trust that recently made the single largest contribution to fund NARSAD grants in our history. You know, as you think about philanthropy, one of the things that's important is people who see an organization that day in, day out delivers, and is really one that has enormous credibility and great principles, that people staying with that over a period of time will give, and then also in their estates will also give. And this is a terrific development. The Colvin Prize will honor his exceptionally generous legacy in perpetuity and remind us of the remarkable power of his very thoughtful philanthropy. We are awarding the Colvin Prize this year to two outstanding scientists. And I'm going to ask Drs. Vieta and Wagner to please join me and to become seated on our stage. Dr. Vieta, Dr. Wagner. And I'm told, hi guys, congratulations. I think we have a short video, am I right? Thank you.
I started doing research in psychiatry because I was always a curious kid. I like, detective movies and things like this. And when I started as a doctor to treat patients, I thought there were questions that were unanswered. Research would help me to expand the assistance and the help I could provide to my patients. My whole career has been devoted to understanding the causes and trying to improve the treatment of bipolar disorder. And many of the available treatments have been tested in our lab and with our patients. One of our findings relate to the combination of mood stabilizers with antipsychotics. Those who benefit, who may be around 60% of the population, are patients who do better, have a better outcome by receiving this combined treatment. And then I think our group is recognized by the contribution with psychosocial therapies as well. Our work on psychoeducation has, I believe, contributed significantly to a better understanding of this condition, not only by doctors, but particularly by patients, by families, and by the society. I'm extremely honored to get this Colvin Prize. And what it means to me is, first, the recognition of my colleagues and peers in America. But moreover, I think the most important thing is that this kind of awards really help us to get more resources and support for our research. This is a work that has made a quite outstanding impact on the course and outcome of people living with this condition. My gratitude is immense.
When I started in the field of child and adolescent psychiatry, there were very few treatments available for children that had mood disorders. Most of the treatments that were being used were those that were used for adults. Mood disorders take away the enjoyment of childhood. If there was something that I could do to help improve these children's lives, to help improve their mood, to help them to enjoy childhood, by about age 5 or 6, a diagnosis of bipolar disorder or depression can be made. And it is crucial, the earlier the diagnosis is made, the earlier there can be an intervention, the earlier treatment can be rendered with the aim of improving the quality of the child's life. My research focus has been on determining what medications can treat children that have depression and children that have bipolar disorder. Our studies were designed to help clinicians know what is the best choice of medication to make when they're faced with that decision. What medication do I pick to treat this child? It's a great honor to receive the Colvin Prize. It is extremely prestigious in the field, and I'm thrilled that I was selected for this award. If we could influence the future, if we could give this child a happy adulthood, that would be a tremendous accomplishment.
Dr. Eduard Vieta has made remarkable contributions to the understanding and treatment of bipolar disorder. His studies range from those that have demonstrated the efficacy of the most widely used atypical antipsychotic in monotherapy and combination therapy in the long-term prevention of both manic and depressive episodes, to one that showed the effectiveness of Neurontin as augmentation therapy in long-term prophylaxis. He and his group have also pioneered in demonstrating the acute and lasting effectiveness of psychoeducation and related psychotherapeutic approaches in the treatment of bipolar disorders, and are in the process of making an online version for patient use. His contributions have thus made an immense impact on the lives of millions of individuals with bipolar disorder in Spain and around the club. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Vieta.
Thank you very much. As mentioned in the video, I'm extremely honored and grateful for this award. I think it speaks about the importance of funding, the importance of the society being involved in mental health, and it speaks about the need to understand and overcome the stigma and many of these things that happen that do not go along with mental illness. It goes along with the prejudice and with things that we've tried to overcome with psychoeducation and other interventions that are aimed at improving patients' lives. I started working as a clinician, and I'm still a clinician, but at a certain point, I realized that if I could go into research, I could actually help more people, not just the people who I was treating, but also people who I wouldn't never see, just trying to understand better this condition and to treat it better. And I'm extremely grateful to my team because all we've done is a team effort. We've worked on drugs, as mentioned here. We worked on psychosocial interventions, and we worked very closely with patients. And without my team, I must at least mention Francesco Lom and Abel Martinez-Aran and many others in my team who have made an outstanding work. I wouldn't be here, and this wouldn't be possible. I would also thank my family, particularly my daughter, my son, and especially my wife, Gloria, who's here with me. You know, some people say that I don't deserve such a smart and beautiful wife, and I think they're right. Some people say that she must be my second wife because she's much younger than I. But they're not right. Actually, she's almost the same age, but apparently we seem to age at different speeds. So honestly, it's great to have you, Gloria, with me, and I hope we can live a long life together. Thank you very much to the foundation. Thank you very much to all of you.
Dineen Wagner, MD, Ph.D., has pioneered in studies of childhood bipolar and unipolar mood disorders. In childhood onset bipolar disorders, she conducted large, multi-centered, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trials, revealing a surprising lack of efficacy of extended-release medications with variance in effectiveness among the very youngest children, but not in adolescents. She also found that combination therapy is often required for good mood stabilization. These seminal contributions have helped in the development and implementation of the most optimal approaches to childhood bipolar disorder, increasingly recognized as a common, difficult to treat, and often highly disabling disorder. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Wagner.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and you might have noticed that I am the last speaker of the night. So that means that they saved the best for the last, or they saved the best for the last. But it is truly a pleasure to be here tonight. And for people that were at the symposium today, you know that I had a choice to make. I could be here today and speak during the symposium and be here tonight to receive the award, or to see my younger son, who for some reason wanted to be a Division I football college player, and tonight is his homecoming. So he's there for homecoming, but my husband is there with him, so we have half of the team with us. And they may be winning or they may not, but my son thought this was a really good thing that I did, and I told him a really good thing that he would do is to help the team win. He's an offensive lineman, but it's amazing. He's considered